Welcome to Meeple University, How to Play Guildmaster. Today we have a special guest. We are joined by the game designer, Chris Antony.
Hi.
Chris, congratulations, your game was successfully funded in Kickstarter.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great game. So we are a backer ourselves and we can't wait for it to be out. When is it due to be out?
Hopefully March, if everything goes well.
Excellent.
Very good. Use a quick rundown what the game is about.
Sure. So in Guildmaster, you play as a master of a fantasy adventuring guild. You have a bunch of adventurers that you send out to complete contracts, to hire better adventurers and hire builders to upgrade your guild hall.
Excellent. That's so cool.
We'll get into the setup and the rules of the game now, and then we'll come back and have more with Chris later in the video. We'll also point out that this is a prototype copy of the game, so some of the art and components are not quite final, but it's pretty close to a complete package.
Now let's learn how to play.
Guildmaster is a competitive action programming game in which players will send teams of adventurers from their guilds out onto the board in order to build up their guilds to be the best they can be. Players can spend money to upgrade their buildings, spend money to hire new adventurers into their guilds, or send their teams out to roll dice and complete contracts from the board. All of these will gain the guild additional fame indicated by this icon and tracked around the board, and the guild with the highest fame after 9 rounds wins the game. To set up the game, each player first chooses one of the teams of novice adventurers, including the small upgrade that comes with it. The rulebook will give you some specific combinations that you can use depending on the player count. Each player then takes his or her order board, guild upgrade board, a privacy screen, and then takes his or her team of starting adventurers and places the starting upgrade on one of these spaces here, choosing which side to place it on, and I'll talk about that choice later in the video. The player also takes a conflict token, 7 coins which goes into the treasury, and 13 action programming cards. Lay out the main board and lay the building tiles out next to it. Put the score markers on 0, place the round marker with a half moon side up on round 1, and place the building cost marker on the space corresponding to your number of players. Take the adept cards, shuffle them up, and then deal 6 onto each of spots A, B and C in a 4-player game, or 8 onto spots A and B and nothing onto spot C in a 3 or 2-player game. For all player counts, place the heroes in 2 piles of 6 on D and E, and place the legends on F. Finally, each player is dealt 5 common contract cards. The players look at them, choose one which they wish to keep as a private contract which only he or she may complete, and then each player chooses one of the other 4 and places it face down into the contracts area as a contract that will be available for everyone. Shuffle the remaining common cards back together and deal up to the space that matches your player count. Then turn the top card face up across the entire board, like so. You're now ready to play. Each round of the game takes place over 4 phases. The first phase, known as the plot phase, is skipped during the first round of the game, so we'll skip over that for now and come and talk about it later. Secondly, you proceed to the order phase, and it's the order phase in which each player will determine which actions they will take and which teams of adventurers they will use to take them. This phase occurs behind the player's privacy screen. After that, all players reveal the actions they have chosen. All players' first actions are carried out in the order depicted by the board. Once those are complete, all players' second actions will be carried out, again in the order shown on the board. And if players have third or fourth orders, those will be resolved in that order. Then, after all actions are resolved, players gain income, and the board is reset for the next round. So now let's look at the orders phase in more detail. Each order that you place represents an action that you'll be attempting to take on the main board. You can only place as many orders as you have space in your stables. So at the start of the game, players will only be able to make 2 orders per round, but can upgrade the stables to make 3 or 4 orders per round. Next, each order that is placed requires a team of at least 1 adventurer to be placed upon it. A team can be as large as the player's mess hall allows. So at the start of the game, a player's teams can be no more than 2 adventurers in size, but again, this can be upgraded to 3 or 4 as the game goes on. Then, each of your teams requires one of your 13 order cards so that you can indicate where you will be sending that team. You would spend this card to send a team to the builders. You would spend one of the shield cards to send a team to that specific location to recruit the matching adventurer, or you would use one of the seal cards to send that team to attempt to complete the specific contract from the main board matching that number. You can also leave a team without one of these cards, and they can do the 4th all-purpose action, which is wandering. Because all of the first orders will be resolved before all of the second orders, you will want to prioritize your most important orders first, because if someone else comes along and completes an order before you, you will miss out and you will have to send that team wandering. The actions to recruit adventurers or to build require money, and a player has to commit that money during the order phase. If a player does not commit enough money to perform the action, then he or she will lose that action during the resolution phase and that team will have to wander. But you will get to keep the money. Before I talk about how we resolve all of the actions during the actions phase, I'm first going to talk about skill checks, as these come up a number of times during the actions phase. There are 6 different types of skills in the game, and these are indicated by the coloured icons down the left-hand side of your adventurer cards. At any point in time, a team of adventurers can perform a skill check in any one of those given skills. And to do this, you add up the numbers for that skill across all those adventurers and roll that many dice. So for this team doing a knowledge skill check, you would roll 4 dice and add up the result. For this team doing a might test, you would roll 8 dice and add up that result. Whatever the total score that you roll on all those dice is the value of your skill check. There are also some buildings and cards during the game which can have a modifying effect on your skill check, and you apply those after you've finished rolling the dice. Note that when you send a team to perform a contract, the most dice that you can roll in the skill check is 10, even if the number of dice adds up to beyond that. You can later add more dice to that if you have a card effect that lets you add a die. The first action to be resolved in any round of orders is building. Building is less expensive at the start of any round and becomes more expensive as the round goes on, so this incentivizes players to build early. When a player builds, a player has 4 options. A player can build 1 small upgrade, 1 large upgrade, a small upgrade and a large upgrade, or 1 prestige upgrade. To build these upgrades, a player must hire builders equal to the number of hammers on the bottom corner of the tile that's being built. To hire a builder, a player moves this marker 1 space up and pays the cost in coins that was covered. So, in order to buy these 2 tiles for a total of 3 builders, this player would need to spend 2 plus 3 plus 3 equals 8 coins, returning that to the main supply. As the round goes on, these builders will get more expensive. And once the builder marker has reached the top of this column, there are no longer any builders to hire in this round. Once the player has finished building, any committed money which is left over can go back into the player's treasury. The player then places any large upgrades on the relevant space of their guild upgrade board, and any small upgrades on one of these 4 spots of the guild upgrade board. A player only has space for 4 small upgrades, and a player cannot build the level 3 upgrade for one part of his or her guild unless having already built the level 2 part. A player may build only one prestige upgrade into his or her guild during the game. The player then immediately scores victory points for the building upgrades that were just built. Prestige upgrades do not have immediate victory points, but will give you bonus victory points at the end of the game. Large upgrades give you a bonus on your guild, allowing you to place more orders, more adventurers, or earn more income at the end of each round. Small upgrades give you a bonus on a relevant type of skill check, and each small upgrade has 2 sides. When you build that small upgrade, you choose which side you want. If you have this side, then whenever you perform that type of skill check, you may, after rolling the dice, re-roll 2 of the dice, hoping for a better result. Alternatively, if you have this side, after rolling the dice, you may take 1 of the dice in that skill check and change it to a 6. It is your choice which way you want to go, but once you've made the choice, you have to keep that choice for the rest of the game. If 2 or more players choose to build in the same order slot, they will be in conflict to see who gets to act first, and therefore who gets the cheaper cost of builders. In order to resolve the conflict, each of the teams of adventurers performs 1 skill check in any skill of its choice. So this player would roll 4 dice for a might check, and this player would roll 3 dice for a spirit check. Whichever player rolls the higher skill check result gets to take the action first, and the other player has to go second. If the result of this change in order means that this player can no longer afford his or her builders or no longer wishes to, then that player can always flip that over and simply send that team wandering. The second set of actions to be resolved is the adventurers area, where you'll be recruiting adventurers. If you take an adventurer action, you can hire the adventurer from the corresponding space, paying the cost of that adventurer, taking the card, immediately gaining the number of victory points shown in the top corner, and then placing it next to your player board ready for use in subsequent rounds. This is not refreshed until the start of the next round. There are 4 types of adventurers in the game: the novices, which you begin with, the adepts, the heroes, and the legends. Your guild cannot recruit a hero until it has at least 1 adept, and you cannot recruit a legend until you have at least 1 hero. But you don't have to include the adept or the hero in the team that is doing the recruiting. You simply have to have one within your guild before you make that recruit. The cost to hire each adventurer varies slightly depending on the type of moon. This moon token will flip over from round to round, alternating between crescent moon and full moon, and so refer to the current round to understand the minimum cost for that adventurer. If 2 players or more attempt to recruit the same adventurer in the same order slot, they go into conflict. The first way to resolve that conflict is to see who bid more money. During the order phase, players can place more than the minimum amount of money required to try to get that adventurer. And this is where that pays off. Whoever bid more money gets to do that recruit. They spend all of the money that they bid and take the recruit into their guild. Players who missed out keep their money, but send that team off wandering. If 2 players conflict on the same adventurer and they bid the same amount of money, then the tiebreaker is the same as for the builders. Each team that was sent will complete 1 skill check of its choice, and whichever player rolls higher gets to make the recruit. If a player bids more than the minimum amount, but is not in conflict with any other players, the player will still pay the full amount of money bid for that adventurer. And if a player goes to recruit an adventurer who was already recruited by someone else in an earlier order slot, that team will wander. The player keeps any money that was committed. The third type of action that a team can take is to attempt to complete a contract. and the team will attempt a contract whose number matches the card that is placed. To attempt a contract, choose one of the skills shown in this bar at the top of the card. Then attempt a skill check in that skill using the team that you committed to the contract. So in this place, this team could perform an arcane check of 5 dice, attempting to beat 9. After you've done your roll, remember of course that you may have small upgrades or other abilities that will help you improve your score. If you meet or exceed the score on that card, you successfully complete the contract. Take the card, take the number of coins shown in the corner, and add the number of victory points shown in the corner here. If there is a lightning bolt, this will be an additional bonus which you take immediately. Then keep it face up next to your guild board. Some contracts also have a boon, which is a bonus that you can activate later in the game at any relevant point in time by activating it and then discarding this card from your collection. After completing the contract, replace it with a face-down card from one of the 3 piles of contract cards of your choice, common, heroic, or legendary, each of which is more difficult than the last. This will be flipped over at the reset phase before the next round. If you attempt to complete a contract but you fail the skill check, your action is over and you receive no compensation. If it comes time to attempt a contract but it was already completed in an earlier order phase, you can send that team to wander. If 2 or more players attempt the same contract in the same order slot, they have the choice to either cooperate or to conflict. They can have a period of negotiation before they decide, but ultimately each player will individually choose by simultaneously revealing the cooperate or conflict side of this token. If all players involved choose to cooperate, then there are 2 different ways that you could resolve the contract. The first way is that each of the teams involved attempts a different skill check on the same contract. So in this case, red would roll 3 dice to attempt the arcane check, and green would roll 5 dice to attempt the might check. Whichever players successfully complete the contract on their own gain the full fame benefit, so each would gain 3 points, and then all of the rest of the rewards are split up between the 2 of them as negotiated before they cooperate. So the players will have had some communication to determine who gets the money, who gets the bonus, who gets to take the card into his or her guild, and who gets to choose the replacement card. If the players choose to cooperate in this manner, but one player succeeds and another fails, the player who failed the check gets nothing, and the player who succeeded gets all of the benefits. The other way that players can cooperate on a contract is by joining forces to form a single team of adventurers that will attempt one skill check on the same contract. The size of the team is equal to either the largest mess hall among the competing players or 1 adventurer per player. So in this case, if one of them had the upgraded mess hall, they could build a team of 3. Out of these, the best skill check that could be done would be an arcane check of 6 by combining these 3 adventurers. Each player then rolls the dice for his or her own adventurers and applies any of his or her own benefits, for example building upgrades, to his or her own dice. If the team collectively meets the skill check, then both players gain the full fame reward and all other benefits are split up as negotiated before cooperating, exactly as before. If one player chooses to conflict and all other players choose to cooperate, then the player who chose to conflict attempts the contract first. However, because the player is essentially fighting the other guild as well as attempting the contract, the difficulty goes up by 1 point for each die rolled. So in this case, to perform a 3 dice arcane check of 9, the player would actually need to meet 12, rolling these dice. If the conflicting player is successful, say by a building effect, then the player takes the full benefit in fame and all of the benefits for the contract. If the player is unsuccessful, then he or she gets nothing. And then all of the cooperating players get a chance to attempt the contract in the same way described before for cooperating players. If more than one player chooses to conflict, then you can think of them as essentially fighting each other, and then anyone who chose to cooperate gets to attempt the contract first. If that player is unsuccessful, then all of the conflicting players get the chance to independently attempt this contract, and whoever is most successful wins the entire contract. Each player independently attempts the contract on either skill check, including the conflict penalty of 1 per die. So this player rolling 3 dice for Arcane would be attempting to meet a 12, and this player rolling 5 for Might would be attempting to meet a 14. Whichever player exceeds his or her adjusted target by the greatest margin wins the contract and is the only one to take the fame benefit and all of the other benefits for that contract. To break a tie, each player rolls the lowest die in his or her skill check again and recalculate the entire check. Throughout all of these cases, the only chance a player gets to send an adventuring team to wander is if he or she is cooperating and a lone conflicting player completes the contract first. In that scenario, each of these two players would send those teams to wander. At any point, if a team's chosen action has already been completed before the team has a chance, or if the player sets up an order without an order card, or if at any time a player chooses, in the action phase, to give up the chosen action, the resulting team may go wandering. To go wandering, the team has 2 options. The first option is that the team may attempt to complete one of that player's private contracts. Completing a private contract occurs exactly the same way as completing a contract on the board. The team attempts one of the skill checks on the contract and is either successful or unsuccessful. If successful, the player gets the benefits shown. If unsuccessful, the contract is simply returned to the player's supply to be attempted another time. The other option that a team has when wandering is to simply perform a single skill check. The guild gains 1 coin and 1 fame for each 10 points rolled on the skill check, rounded down. If the skill check is less than 10, the player still gains 1 coin, but no fame. After everyone has completed all of their orders, proceed to the end of round reset phase. To do this, players take back all of their order cards and adventurers, ready to deploy in the next round. And then players get income based on the quality of their guild's bar. The building cost is reset down to the bottom of the track for the start of the next round. Then, if you are not in a Blood Moon round, flip over all of the top cards that are face down at the moment, ready for the next round. If you are in a Blood Moon round, first discard all face-up cards from the board, then replace them on the contract area with common contracts, and then flip all of the cards face up. If an adventurer deck ever runs out of cards, it remains empty for the rest of the game. Finally, to end the round, move the round marker to the next level, flipping it over so that you alternate between crescent moon and full moon. After this, you proceed to the start of round phase, and remember that we skipped over this before because it doesn't occur in round 1. First, check all of the contracts to see if any have this lighthouse icon. These are events, and their effects will remain in play until this contract has been completed. For example, this one reduces the cost of builders until someone completes that contract. Then, If you're in a blood moon, each player draws one new private contract from the top of the common contracts pile. If it's not a blood moon round, you skip over this. Then proceed to the plot phase. And in the plot phase, the only thing that happens is that any adventurers who have a plot phase effect printed at the bottom of their cards take that effect. Some plot phase effects occur only on half moon rounds, some occur only on full moon rounds, some on blood moon rounds, and some in all rounds. These effects will occur regardless of whether the player sends those heroes onto an adventure this round or not. After the plot phase, play proceeds back to the order phase, where players will put up their privacy screens and determine their orders for this coming round. A couple of other general rules. Firstly, adventurers, instead of having a plot phase effect, may have an action phase effect, and this will improve your efficiency during the action phase. Once again, some of these will be limited to which type of moon it will be in effect for, whereas others will be able to be used on every round. And once again, these powers affect your entire guild, regardless of whether or not this adventurer is on the adventure which requires that power. There are some effects in the game which will allow players to hire builders for free, such as this character card. When this happens, the player does not pay any cost for the builder, but still moves this token up, making subsequent builders more expensive for everyone else. The other general rule is how open negotiations between guilds are permissible during the game. We've already spoken earlier about how when players choose to cooperate or conflict on a contract, players will in advance have determined how they'll be splitting up the benefits other than the victory points for that contract. But additionally, throughout the game, players can openly discuss their plans, either telling the truth or lying, and can incentivize each other to take certain actions by the payment of cash bribes. But no other goods are allowed to change hands during these actions. The only agreement which is considered binding by the rules of the game is how you will split up the non-victory point benefits for one of these contracts if you cooperate. Once the 9th round has been played, the game is over and proceed to final scoring. There are only 2 steps in final scoring. Firstly, each player counts up any remaining coins and gains 1 victory point for each 5 coins rounded down. Then, each player scores points for his or her prestige upgrade. In this case, for example, the player gets 1 fame for each completed contract, for 8 points. Note that in the prestige upgrades that talk about completed contracts, only contracts that the player still has in his or her supply count. If the player has used a boon, he or she will have discarded that and will no longer have it to count to this particular endgame objective. The player with the highest score wins, and in the event of a tie, victory is shared.
And that's how to play Guildmaster. So Chris, can you please tell us what inspired you behind the game design and the game artwork?
Sure. So I was actually inspired by the board game Spartacus,
Yep.
Which came out a while ago now. It was one of the first licensed board games that had a solid design. And for those who don't know, in Spartacus you play as the master of like a gladiator school.
Yep.
So you hire gladiators, you get them to fight, and there's intrigue and whatnot. And I thought it'd be interesting to apply that rough concept to fancy adventurers,
Yep.
adventuring guilds. It just went on from there, and here we are.
Very good. Really nice concept and design.
Very good. We hope you enjoyed our video, and we hope you enjoy playing Chris's game. Please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to hear more from Meeple University.